Jason from the Surf Hermits here, coming at you with a new Creative Waves. This episode's going to be something a little bit different. We've got Sam Williams from Down by Law and Black Valley Moon and many others. One of my favorite guitar players on the scene today. We talk about all sorts of stuff creativity-wise. We even talk a little bit about Van Halen. So buckle up for another episode of Creative Waves here on the Pi Records Video Network.
How's it
Cool,
going, man?
Good. How are you? Good to talk to you in person.
Yeah, good to finally meet.
Yeah. Dig the shirt, by the way.
Oh, thanks. I'm more of a Trekkie, really, but
Oh, really?
a couple of these shirts, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Sorry. Meeting's over. See you.
right.
I'm
Cool, man.
with it.
Yeah, I'm digging your shirt too. Yeah, that's great. It's like one of my favorites of all time. That's why I started playing guitar.
Yeah. I've always been a huge fan. I bought this the day that Eddie died because I didn't have a Van Halen shirt at all. But
that's a good point. I don't think I have one either. Maybe I do. I saw him only on the last tour with David Lee Roth. I finally got to see him when they came through. That was amazing. But that was the only time I saw him. I
saw them in '88, Monsters of Rock. It was like
awesome,
kind of Sammy Hagar era, but still. I went there as a Van Halen fan and I left that concert as a Metallica fan. So,
that's right. They were on that too, right?
Yeah,
there was a lot of great bands on that, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was like Metallica, Scorpions, Dokken, and there was a band called Kingdom Come, which was kind of like a Zeppelin ripoff.
Yeah, I remember them well. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, because a lot of people talk about that Greta Van Fleet band.
Right. Yeah,
there's such a Zeppelin ripoff these days, and then a lot of times Kingdom Come will come up in the same conversation.
Totally. Yeah, it's interesting because Kingdom Come was so glam rock and how they looked, and Greta Van Fleet doesn't seem to have that same visual thing.
Right.
Definitely sound Zeppelin though. That's cool.
For sure. Yeah.
So thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
It's all good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I just kind of wanted to talk to someone else besides myself about the creative process. So this isn't about like what strings do you use on your guitar and all that kind of stuff. Though I may pick your brain about reverends later on, but
right. Cool.
I just wanted to talk more about creative process. I guess I should say I stumbled upon you on Sharawaji Records.
Cool.
I was browsing through the catalog there when Surf Hermits got on there, and I was like, awesome. Black Valley Moon, that sounds pretty cool. And I think that's right around when the vinyl sort of came out on that. And I heard the first 30 seconds of Skyway to Hell, and I instantly clicked buy on the record. I was just like, okay.
Cool. Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you.
That really kind of blew me away.
Oh, that's cool, man. I would love to hear your version of it. Are you going to record that, or are you just learned it?
It's recorded. Yeah.
Too cool.
I've got it all together.
That is awesome.
So I'll send it to you. You can have right of final approval.
It's all good. That's so cool.
Yeah. I was in COVID isolation, and it took me probably a day per phrase to get that figured out because I'm a terrible guitar player. And then I sort of got the first half done, and I was like, okay, second half is just going to be whatever I would do.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Yeah. I do that all the time when I'm trying to figure stuff out. Yeah, like a Eric Johnson song or something. I get to a part that I'm just going to do my own thing.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, I think as players, regardless of what instrument you play, to me, that's how I learned how to play drums. I just copied cool shit that I liked, and I would cram it into any other context that existed. It's like,
that's
this fill doesn't fit there, but it would teach. Yeah. So as a player, obviously you can play guitar, no problem, but there's been a path to get there. What were you going for when you started playing? Like, what did you hear that made you want to play?
Okay, well, when I very first started playing, it was really specifically because of Eddie Van Halen.
Right.
That was just when I was a little kid, and I was just looking for something to fit into, or something that resonated with me, because some people, kids are into sports or they're into art or something, So to me, Eddie Van Halen was like the cool guy. But it's so daunting to start with somebody like that, I was like, I can't get anywhere near that, So I ended up really shortly after that, getting into the punk thing. And that was my bread and butter for years. I mean, from there, I ended up joining Down by Law, which is the most notable thing in my career, and, that's a whole, the influences I had at that point were, I'll say that always from the very start, as soon as I started playing in bands, which was about a week after I started playing guitar, it was all about making up cool riffs and songs. So I always had that before, like, trying to shred or learn a bunch of theory or anything. I was just always into making up cool parts. And so when I joined Down by Law, I started touring with bands that I really idolized, like the Descendants or something like that, or Bad Religion.
Right.
And I would pick up things from these guys because they were world-class players, and but always, even then, and then I went on for a while, I went on a metal tangent. I played in like a thrash metal band with one of the dudes he's an Obituary now. Yeah. And the drummer for DRI. And so I was doing like the metal thing, but always the whole time I'm thinking, there are different techniques to these kinds of music. You want to have there's different tones, just different approaches, but always I'm thinking about the song,
Right.
More so the music. I'm not a good lyricist, so I always have to have somebody that will handle that side of it. I'm more like Johnny Marr or something like that. I write the music, and somebody else has to deal with the lyrics and stuff. Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah. So, what do you prefer? Are you an instrumental guy or a vocal guy? Like, if you could sort of somehow instantly express like your ideal perfect album, is it going to be Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow, or is it going to be like Journey or something?
Well, you know what? It's tough to say. I mean, the reason I started Black Valley Moon was because, after my heyday at Down by Law, say the last 15 or so years, 10 or 15 years, I've really been trying to learn guitar on that more technical level, I guess, to a degree, whereas I kind of blew it off before. I wouldn't say I blew it off, but it was always secondary in terms of, like I say, writing songs and stuff. Yeah. So then I'm like, okay, I have the songwriting thing down to the degree that I want. So let me improve on the other stuff, like the lead playing, the chord vocabulary, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
And so after I got really deep into that, my whole concept was I want to do an instrumental band that showcases guitar stuff, but that doesn't sound like Steve Vai or Joe Satriani or something. I love all those players and I love their music, but I just wanted to do something different. I'm still, so I'm like, I'm into different things, and I just want to showcase different things on top of the guitar thing. So I kind of narrowed it down to a few different things. At one point, the concept I had was it was going to be like Trans-Siberian Orchestra, but but the music would be more like pop punky based, like the Descendants or something like that. Totally. But with the vocal melody being carried by the guitar. And I toyed with that for a while, and then, but I also love the surf thing, and I kind of stumbled onto that genre, and I really like stuff from like the 60s, early 60s and 50s. So it just ended up, after I got the guys together, that's what we ended up doing. And I was like, okay, this is cool. And I love it. I love playing the instrumental thing, but it's a tough sell, and I don't like one better than the other. I like them both. But at one point, so we got a singer, and it's basically musically it's still the same as it always was, but we do it with a singer sometimes,
Right. Yeah.
And like I say, I don't really prefer one over the other. I just kind of let it dictate by which one gets called for gigs more, and it's invariably it's going to be the one with the vocals,
Absolutely.
Because unless you're the surf, if you're playing, to the surf crowd, I mean, they're totally fine with instrumentals. But if you want to play outside of that, most people are going to want vocals. I mean, we played a few songs. we played at several shows in our instrumental phase to crowds that were not surf crowds. And, sometimes they just didn't get it. They're like, okay, when are you going to start singing?
You're missing a whole memory here. Yeah.
So we got the singer. It adds a whole nother dimension to it. It makes it kind of a different thing rather than a genre thing. And I like it either way, and I'll we're still going to put out instrumental stuff. We have a few instrumental songs now that are ready to go in the pipeline, so we'll keep doing both. And I can't say I like one or the other, both, because like I said, I'm all about writing the music. So if somebody wants to sing over it, that's cool, and I like the final results.
So for that process, then, writing the music, like you said, when you started, very shortly after even playing, it was about coming up with parts for you, about sort of creating riffs in that case. But writing wise, is it something that comes to you fully formed? Is it something that you hear in your head that, you have to grind at to get out? Or is it something that comes together from that particular group of people that you're playing with? Is it something, that you bring in, or is it something that gets created in context there?
Well,
or all of the above?
It is all the above. It's always different. A lot of times I usually have a purpose when I'm writing something. There's a purpose behind it. So I'm thinking, okay, Down by Law needs a record, or okay, I have to come up with X amount of songs for Black Valley Moon, or I'm going to do a metal record. And then I really have to sit down and get that mindset. And sometimes, usually the first couple things take a really long time to get going. I can go all day and just have a million things and keep putting them out, but my editing system internally, I can tell when it's not good and when it's not. I think I can anyway. So
we hope.
Yeah. Well, the reason I say that is because sometimes I go back and listen to those demos and I'm like, well, this is usable. Why didn't I see it before? But so I'll sit there a long time, and then once I have maybe the first thing together and I'm satisfied with it, then it starts rolling from there.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot easier after you get the first one or two songs down. But I do usually, it's a purposeful thing for me. And something will come into my head that says, it'll just spark the idea. So, for instance, like Skyway to Hell, I was thinking, not necessarily surf, but I was thinking 60s spy movie car chase or something like that, you know? And, from there, I just kind of try to hit this riff or that riff, and I'll think, does this work with that? A concept? Yes, no. And sometimes I'll leave that concept behind if I get onto something else that works, and I'll just go with it. But a lot of times that initial concept is what starts the first riff or something,
That's fascinating, because in a way I'm the opposite. It's like I can do like 3 songs of anything instantly, almost. It's like, hey, Jace, let's do a jazz fusion record together. Okay, Sam, I'll send you 3 tunes, and then after that it becomes the grind. It's like, okay, how do I not repeat myself here? Or whatever.
Yes, right. That becomes difficult too.
Yeah, and that for me is what's been interesting about the last couple of years, just doing kind of, it's kind of a misnomer to even call what I'm doing surf, but I find that it's been a constant process. I haven't run into that wall yet, which is fascinating. I've just kind of thrown myself into it, and I'm just letting what comes out come out. Yeah, in that way. But,
yeah, that's cool. I mean. I don't know. That's typically my thing. And there have been times where I'll get 2/3 of the way through and I'll just hit a wall, and I'll just be like you said, I don't want to repeat another theme. I got to get out of this tempo or something. I have too many songs that are in the same tempo. And then it might take me like 2 weeks to figure it out. Of just try things over and over and over again until something finally strikes,
Yeah. Do you find that sometimes those ones that are the real struggle, and maybe the ones you don't even kind of like as much when you finish later on, do you find that those somehow work in a weird way? to me, like I'll have these ones where I'll just fight with it for like 2 weeks and it's like, oh, this is a piece of crap, but I'm going to finish it. And then later on, I'm like, wow, that's actually, I like listening to that more than the stuff I liked, you know?
Right. Yeah, for sure. I've had that feeling before. And another funny thing is, because, you know, it's all about the perspective of a song, you know, so one person will hear it and it'll make them think of something cool, and then another person will hear it and they won't think of anything, and they'll just analyze it, you know, on a surface level. And so everybody has a different opinion of the same song, and I find a lot of times that the ones that I think are just my masterpiece, like, man, I just crushed it with this song, this is like world class, and people just won't care, and they'll like the other one that was just kind of, you know, thrown out, that didn't seem like that big of a deal to me, you know. And I've heard that from a lot of songwriters, you know, that happens, you know.
We need to come up with some sort of like name for that principle, because I noticed that playing gigs like all my life, you know, that gig where you're up there and you're like, man, people are, you know, this is the best thing I've ever done, you know, like, it's amazing. We're just slaying it, you know, and then people would be like, meh, you know, and then the nights where it's like, I want to hide my face. This is terrible. Yeah. Like, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Like somehow it doesn't work, you know, you can never see it through their other people's eyes or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's totally true. It's so weird.
Yeah. So you were saying, and we both talked about sort of trying not to repeat oneself. Do you have any sort of strategies for habit breaking in yourself?
Yeah, I do. That's the one time I'll maybe listen to some other stuff. Right. Because I don't listen to a lot of stuff for inspiration, you know, so much. But if I get in a rut, I will do it. At that point, I'll just be like, God, you know, what else is there? You know, I feel like I've done, and then, but you know, you listen to someone else's record and you're like, oh yeah, there's that drum beat. I could mess around with that beat maybe, or that, you know, that chord change there's those going between these two chords I never would have thought of, or something, you know, and you just kind of so I do that sometimes to break out of it. That'd probably be the main thing. Something like that.
What do you consider your bad habits? Like, what habits are you catching yourself at and going, oh, stop that?
Writing in the same key all the time, because like I could do A minor all day long, you know, and it sounds so cool to me every time. Every time I come up with a riff in A minor, I'm speaking for like surf type stuff. But it always sounds good to me just going in the straight minor key like that. Not even A minor, just a minor key. So, and then, you know, you always get caught kind of going between the 1, the 4, and the 5 a lot. That's a classic, you know.
Yep, of course,
between those things. And so to get out of that, I would listen to something like maybe Frank Sinatra or something like that, and hear the changes that are going on behind there, which are, you know, you're getting in the jazz territory a little bit there.
Totally.
And I'm not like an aficionado or anything, but I can hear like, oh, they made this one this is like a minor 7 flat 5 in this spot where I would not have thought. So that works in this in this key. So let me see if I do that, you know, and can figure out something over it. That would be one thing. Just finding those odd kind of jazzy chord voicings and making them work, you know, and something that's not jazz, you know.
Right.
For me, when I listen to stuff like jazz, it's almost solely for that, because you get tired of the same, you know, just straight up minor major song progressions, which is what, you know, most pop music we listen to and blues it is, you know. So
right. Yeah.
I would listen to something a little more jazz oriented just to see if I can hear a chord change that I wouldn't have thought of listening to just normal, you know, mainstream regular old music, you know. And I wouldn't exactly go back and write a jazz song, but I'm thinking I'll pick some little piece out of it, you know, like a Wes Montgomery tune or something, and be like, oh, there's a cool chord, you know, how's that working, you know, and I'll figure out why it works in that, and then I'll try to make it into my 1, 4, 5 thing. I'll add this weird little chord, and then it's a whole new thing, you know. So
it's interesting that predictability is something that, especially as musicians, I think, you know, I know for myself listening to music, it's I get sick of the same old thing, when you hear that song on the radio and it's that same chord progression that a billion other songs use. And it's neat when there's a surprise in there sometimes.
For sure.
Yeah. Like that's for me, I'm always trying to surprise myself if I can. I have a pretty limited vocabulary. So it's like what do I, what kind of weird wrench can I throw into the works here?
Yeah. It's so necessary after years of playing that stuff. You just want something a little different, and the jazz stuff can be difficult to listen to sometimes. But I like this really song oriented jazz stuff, which tends to be the really old stuff, from like the 50s and 60s, before it got all fusiony and stuff. It's like there's straight up songs there, that anybody can listen to, and but they have unique melodies to them and progressions that you wouldn't think of being a person of the 2000s.
That's funny because again, I'm like the opposite. It's like, give me Bitches Brew over like Ella Fitzgerald any day of the week.
Well,
not that I don't like that stuff, but
no, I hear you. I do listen to that stuff sometimes too, but not so much for inspiration,
right.
Myself.
yeah to me it's interesting. It's almost like a different musical part of my brain. Like I could listen to Return to Forever all day, but there's almost nothing that my hands will pull out of that when I'm writing for some reason. Like I could sing those solos, but there's no way I could even start to play them or something like that. It's weird. So okay, that's busting habits that you catch yourself at. What do you consider your good habits?
Well, like they said, the thing I developed so early on, which was it's all songwriting chops. There are some genres that I could write what I think is an awesome song. Like it would take me no time at all. Like you're saying, you could just throw something out. There are some like the melodic punk type genre, power pop. So we're talking like Replacements, The Jam, Buzzcocks, that kind of thing. I could write something that would stand alongside that stuff in a heartbeat, because I spent so many times like studying it, informally. I'm touring with bands like the Descendants, which are like the top notch for that kind of music and that kind of songwriting, and Buzzcocks. We toured with them, so I get to see all these bands. And I would ask them questions. Like I remember asking Pete Shelley when we toured with the Buzzcocks. I was going through a Yes phase where I was listening to the first Yes album over and over, And Pete Shelley, so Buzzcocks, again, one of the great songwriters for his genre. And I'm like thinking, there's no way he likes Yes. That's too outer spacey for somebody like him. But I asked him, he's like, what are you listening to? I said, Yes, the first album. And he said he loves Yes. He loves their first album especially. And then he told me about a Buzzcocks song that was hugely influenced by a Yes song. And showed me how it was and stuff. And that blew me away. Yeah. And it also opened my eyes, and we talk to these guys, they listen to so many different things, the guys in the Descendants, like they all worship Black Sabbath, that was like their favorite band. So, I forget where I was going with that, but oh no, because so I studied, I'm learning all about the song craft or whatever from these guys, and so that would be one of my strengths is that, and I know when I'm writing something that's a cliche or trite, I know it right off the bat, and like I said, I have a really pretty stringent editing system, and that's not to say everything I write is amazing, but to me, at least it does what I want it to do. I never have written a song and I'm just like, I completely failed. That is cliche. That got by me. That's like so lame. At least it passes my test,
Yeah,
so that's really,
it's held to a standard. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So definitely.
Yeah, that's cool. Would you say now for your editing process, maybe this question will make no sense at all, but what's the framework of that? Is there an ideal song, like, in a sort of metaphysical sense that is trying to come out of you in a sense, or that somehow you're comparing everything that you do to, there's a certain feeling that, that the perfect thing gives you, you know, how are those standards built for you?
It's very tricky. So it's so funny, you know, I try to avoid cliches so much. That's a big one. But at the same time, I allow some cliches to happen sometimes, you know. I mean, you can't, there's only so many chords and notes on a guitar. So, you know, maybe I'll do like a chord progression that's been done many times, and is nothing really special, but maybe I'll try to spice it up with a slightly different voicing that you don't hear all the time, you know. And then from there, I'll think, okay, what can I go into next that'll throw people for a loop, you know?
Yeah.
And that may be another kind of standard chord progression, but it's one you haven't heard next to the other one so many times. And also thinking, what voicing can I use here that's a little different, but not too different? You know, you always want to reel it back so that it's not getting, you know, if you're trying to make a kind of music that is easy to listen to, you always want to have those touchstones where people, you know, it's not a bunch of tension oriented chords all together, you know. Stuff has to resolve. And so
familiarity is a powerful tool, actually. For sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's that, and then if I'm on a roll, I'm just thinking, you know, do I want to just kind of stick this to the standards? You know, I'll probably mess with the formation of it a little bit. So instead of bridge chorus, verse chorus, you know, bridge, lead, chorus out, you know, something really standard like that. I'm like, what? Let me throw another little thing in there that doesn't make it too crazy. But you know, it's a very difficult balancing act. And then of course, to make these other changes I'm talking about, like some kind of little jazz change up in there, but without making it a jazz song, you know, making it easy to listen to and make it so that people don't even really notice maybe that it was some weird change that isn't usually there, you know. And, you know, once I've done all that, if I've checked all those boxes off and I'm happy with it, at the end, I just sit back and listen to it. And it flows. Everything flows as I wanted it to. It's maybe something a little different than I've done ever, you know. Then it's a home run for me, you know. For me.
Are you someone that can listen to your recorded material, or are you one of those guys that once you're done it, then that's it kind of thing?
I think when I was a kid and I first started, especially with Down by Law, I would listen to this stuff over and over again, especially, you know, because it was so cool collaborating with the singer for Down by Law is Dave Smalley, who was in my favorite punk band growing up, which was Dag Nasty. And he was also in All. And so collaborating with him, and that's another aspect of this whole songwriting thing. As I mentioned, I don't write lyrics or vocals. I hand it off to someone else to deal with that. And, you know, having him on that stuff, it would make me want to listen to those songs over and over again, you know. And, but then after so many years, I did get to the point where I haven't listened to that stuff in so long. And I will still listen to maybe the most recent stuff I've done in the last, you know, 5 or 6 years, because it's something I haven't heard as often, and I've really been pushing myself on guitar for both Black Valley and Down by Law, you know, so I'll catch myself listening to that stuff. But you know, eventually I'll probably stop with that as well. And you know, so in other words, to answer your question, it's to a degree. I'll listen to the stuff and then it kind of falls back. Like
it has a shelf life for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the first record I did with Down by Law just got reissued on Epitaph.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's coming out like
vinyl.
Yeah. And I was stoked on it because that's the most notable record I've ever done, but it was also the first one. I was like 19 when I did it, so I wasn't, you know, it almost makes me kind of shudder to think about going back and listening to that, you know, because it's so long ago.
You know,
you feel like I don't know. You notice how far you've come since then, and you probably just notice a bunch of fall. Or maybe it's fun to listen to something like that, but I don't know. It did make me think about that album, and I'm like, man, I wonder how that holds up if I went back and listened to it now,
Yeah, for your own standards, it's like, man,
right?
Does the playing make me cringe now, or is it, like,
yeah. And it's funny because that was our commercial peak, and that's still the one everybody. That's why it got reissued, is because that's the one everybody loves and knows. And to me, I'm thinking, man, that's it might, to me, from my perspective, it might seem kind of immature maybe, or something. I don't know,
Right. Yeah.
But then as a listener, I've had that same experience where, my favorite bands are like not keen on playing their stuff in their first couple albums or something. And I'm just like, come on, man, that's what I like.
That's what you're here for. Yeah.
Yeah. But I can understand from their perspective, but it's like, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always a funny tension as musicians. It's like, I think what we think we're doing as musicians is not actually what music is for most people,
right?
In a weird way,
sure.
like
for
that.
Sure. Yeah.
The best musicians are not the most famous musicians necessarily, and the most famous musicians are not necessarily the best either.
So true. Yeah.
From how we sort of see it in a funny way. So, I always think we have this, as musicians, we have this wrong idea about what we're actually doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But which is cool because, we go off, if everyone, knew what the purpose was, okay, let's provide everyone with familiar stuff or whatever, then nothing would ever get done artistically.
That's the other tricky thing, is to keep the audience in mind and put out stuff that's easy for a non-musician to listen to. Like you say, that's the purpose of it. But at the same time, keep your own self on your toes, and not repeat yourself, but not get too weird. And it's very tricky. It's
absolutely it is.
Yeah.
Now, for you, like you said, that writing is a deliberate process for you. My eyes will be flicking over because Zoom's going to cut us off in about 7 minutes here. So
okay,
we'll either wrap it then, or we'll stop and reconvene on a new
sure.
If things are going well. But I forget even what I was going to ask now, but let's see. Other instruments. I see you have drums in the background. Is there anything else you play?
Not really. I have that for recording, because this is basically my live room for studio stuff, and possibly practicing. And I, when I got the drum set, I always thought to myself, because, I write things, I'll write everything. I'll write the bass line, I could do the drums, but I can't play the drums really, except for the Ramones beat,
Yeah.
So, I always thought to myself, well, if I get a drum set and set it up, then I'll at least learn how to play that, pretty good. But every time I think about that, I'm like, I could still get better. I could still get better at guitar. So I don't want to waste a minute of that doing something else, it's like an OCD thing with me.
Right. Yeah. So, fair enough. For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's like I was forced to make myself play guitar because, I play drums to the point where I feel like, I can express what I hear, and there's always things I could do better and I could work harder. Absolutely. But, to me, it's about making something bigger than that, like I want to make music, and if I don't have people around to do it all the time, or I don't feel like waiting for people, it's like I gotta cultivate that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And for me, that's what I've been doing is literally just an experiment, and not having to wait for other people's tracks. What can I accomplish 100% on my own, but
yeah, it'd be a good thing to know for sure. I should know it, but I don't.
Well, it's good. I mean, if you got great people around, I mean, the rest of the band of Black Valley Moon is great as well. Really enjoying.
Yeah, those guys are awesome. Yeah, they're really good players.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, okay. Thanks for this, Sam. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, man. I love what you're doing too. It sounds amazing.